Alright, hello. This is GIC 1336 Digital Drafting and Design. This is going to be the first lecture of Section 2, Survey Drafting, and this will be your total overall Lecture 5, Boundary Surveys. Alright, so again, our objectives for today are going to be covering boundary surveys, and we're going to have a design lab included with that. Next week for Lecture 6, we're going to be covering site surveys along with another design lab. Lecture 7 is going to be covering subdivision and ALTA overviews. We're going to have a guest presenter for that lecture, and then we're going to have another report or literature review. Lecture 8, we're going to go ahead and cover as-built surveys, and then we're going to start going over your project plan assignment. That's going to tie into your project for the end of the semester in place of your final exam. And then we're going to have Lecture 9, which is going to cover using ArcGIS Pro for surveying, along with your project report. All right, so what are boundary surveys? Boundary surveys, they're a type of land survey that's going to create precise definition or retracement of legal boundary lines between two parcels via recorded monumentation at our property corners. In Texas, only registered professional land surveyors can define a boundary. And that last part is really important, especially this being a mixed geospatial sciences program, that you understand boundaries truly, legally, can only be defined by an RPLS. It doesn't matter if you have the information or the data and you know how to put it together, in a visualization software like AutoCAD or ArcGIS Pro. It doesn't matter if you have looked at a map on the County Central Appraisal District website and see it, or if you use the plethora of apps that are coming out today that claim to provide you boundary retracement tools. None of that is legal. None of it is definitive, especially in Texas. It can only be defined by an RPLS, and that's very important for us to remember, because if you're like me, who works more on the GIS or the geospatial sciences side of this profession, I deal with boundaries and I deal with having to look at plats and lot lines and all of this every single day, multiple times a day, and I have to put that disclaimer on any map product that I produce. These boundary lines are representative and subject to definition by an RPLS. And these types of disclaimers are very important for us as a profession, for me as a professional, not to overstep my jurisdiction, essentially, and what I am and am not able to do. And I think it's really important that everyone in this program truly understands that. That also puts a lot of onus on the RPLS to make sure that they do proper surveys, and that when they're recreating those surveys and things like AutoCAD, they understand the data and they understand what the tool does and how it kind of represents data that they collected in the field. Because again, it's utmost importance as far as protecting private property or even public property, to ensure that you understand what it is you're visualizing. Cannot be emphasized enough the importance of understanding what a boundary is and then who has jurisdiction over defining it. And getting back to the focus of what are boundary surveys, they're surveys that explicitly focus on defining a property's extent, or its footprint, in this world, particularly in relation to its adjoiners. And then there are going to be other types of surveys where a boundary may be included, but it's not necessarily necessary. Things like topographic surveys, like if you're out flying a drone to collect continuous topographic information, extent is not the same thing as a boundary. A boundary is that legal definition. So the extent of some topo survey that you did maybe doesn't require a boundary if it doesn't need to be represented, because the data is more relative, as well as it is interpolated. We create that continuous surface through a series of individual points to try to say what a continuous surface looks like. So it's a representation, not the same thing as a boundary, which is a clear, hard definition. Site surveys, where we're trying to look at existing structures, even initial phases for lot plans and things like that, because we're not necessarily looking exactly where the corners of each one. You're designing it, you go out, you collect information for an area, you design it, then the subdivision in CAD, and then it's when you go out afterwards, once that construction's actually begun, and you start setting a monumentation to define those lots, does it really start making a difference and crossing over from, maybe subdivision work to you are doing boundary work, or you are creating a boundary or retracing a boundary, which is going to be what's most common for any of you who go the RPLS route in relation to boundaries. And again, everything I've said, it kind of emphasizes this last point here as well. That boundary surveys, they're fundamental to the ideals of land rights and land ownership. And I think that's something that you'll get to touch on a lot more when you go through history of Texas land ownership and your there's a legal course that you'll take as part of this program later on that's going to focus on the legal side of surveying in land, and you'll get to explore a lot of the acts and codes that the state has put out, and you'll see how those boundaries and stuff get tied into a lot of things without explicitly talking about surveyors. But eventually it is defined within Texas code that only surveyors are able to actually define a boundary, licensed surveyors. So where do our boundary surveys begin? And I'm not just talking about the point of beginning of our survey, I'm talking about the process of actually beginning a project that includes a boundary survey in it. And it really is going to start always at the courthouse or online if the courthouse has their records there. But that's where, you as the surveyor are going to be going to try to find copies of that property's legal description. And that legal description, in reality, that's the definition of the survey. The map, the plat that you create from your data, from your observations, is second to that legal description, because what that legal description says is going to be a higher level of legal evidence to define a boundary. So something to remember there. So again, like I said before, in our modern era, our technology oftentimes it gives us access to a lot of land records online. The county clerks across the entire state of Texas have been charged, county clerks in the central appraisal districts have been charged with making sure all of their records are available online. There was a major legal land case, I believe, involving Trenton, that kind of implemented that. So you're going to start seeing more and more records available online, and often how they're available is going to become easier and easier to access. So it's these digital cadastral systems that are going to help us really access these records. Whether without having to go physically into a courthouse is going to be a boon to a lot of surveyors. There are certain companies already that kind of offer that information, for a fee, Texas File, Courthouse Direct and stuff. And they bring in a lot of other information that might not necessarily define to the legal descriptions, but they'll bring information about like right-of-ways, easements, if there are mineral rights or specific changes, things like that, that have been tied to this property over time. It'll all kind of get included. So those are really helpful, but again, don't ever forget that as the surveyor, when you're doing this work, the due diligence rests on your shoulders. So if you find what you feel like is just enough information, but you don't feel like it's all of the information online, it would probably be in your best interest to execute on that due diligence and go to those courthouses and try to find some of that information. Especially in more rural counties too, a lot of times it's those stewards within the central appraisal district or within the county courthouse, their libraries and stuff, where they're going to have a lot of humorous information. So just things that people know, have shared and said over time. They might be able to give you contacts of property owners or people that know something about a property that is going to be invaluable, that you can't just find written down on a field note somewhere. It's the really working with the people, because you got to imagine, who is it that owns property? The people who cares the most about their property, the people that have lived there and known the people that have lived there. So it's always good to consider that if you don't feel like you're getting everything that should be out there online. Don't don't let online limit you in your due diligence. And again, we've talked about legal descriptions a few times here. Just a quick, solid definition. A legal description is a technical record of a property, and it is considered a public record. So in Texas, the legal description holds weight over a plat. So there's things that I was already referring to before. And this is things that have been kind of set in common law over time when we've had boundary disputes, because one person uses one piece of evidence, the other one uses another, and then you get different results, and then it goes to court if there's potential encroachments, and then it gets resolved. And that's how we kind of end up with a lot of our definitions on our legal restrictions as far as land surveying and land law is concerned. A lot of it is very much common law focused. All right, so again, is a legal description enough evidence in relation to boundary surveys? So again, often additional information is going to be required for retracement. That's what I'm talking about, speaking with the adjoiners, trying to recover monumentation on their properties to tie in, to show, that you're accurately representing or retracing this boundary. Knowing the owners, kind of knowing the history of the land, and taking that and trying to filter through what's just general things being said and what's important evidence that you're going to need to properly do this retracement. And again, it's the whole point is collecting evidence that's going to help you validate the retracement that you do, whether it's recovered monumentation or, forbid you end up uncovering a pincushion. Figure out which one of those pins is going to be the one that you should hold to. It's not always which one's the oldest once it turns into a pincushion situation, but if you do find the original, that original monumentation is the most important one. Remember that. And please don't be the surveyor that creates pincushions. It's a headache for everyone. And again, once our data is collected, the land boundary surveyor is going to be ready to begin their fieldwork, and that's establishing your control network of known points, and that's the traverse. We've gone over traverses as far as the drafting perspective of traverses, but again, like what that is, that's your control network throughout, and what that does is those points are going to help you locate existing monuments and other types of boundary evidence that should be recoverable, or that you should be looking for to recover. And again, as soon as your fieldwork is completed, the land surveyor, then what you have to do is you have to compare the results with the initial collection of evidence. You have to reconcile everything into a kind of final conclusion regarding the property's legal boundaries. Another field trip may be necessary to set new monuments if you find out, hey, we weren't able to recover these ones, but I found, the two nodes on either end of it, and from there you're able to maybe utilize something like a distance and bearing to try to find out where that should be, and then go back out, recheck. If you can't find it, potentially set that new monumentation. And again, that's where a lot of times pincushions can happen. Original monumentation's lost, so a surveyor goes out and then they opt to set their own because they didn't find the original one, even though there are other pins already set. All right, so let's get into the parts of a boundary survey. What your final deliverables are typically going to look like at the end of a boundary survey. So you're going to have a plan and legal description of your property. You're going to have written descriptions of all your boundary lines. You're going to have notes of monuments on your property corners. The registry research of deeds, so everything you collected from the courthouse, the legal documentation on it. Notes are going to be what you maybe collected verbally from people. The deed sketch to define the boundary lines, and that's what we're going to be specifically working on in this class. And then a detailed analysis of all of your collected data. So this is essentially just assembling all of your evidence into a coherent packet, that can be provided. Now, at times, you're only going to have to file certain things with the courthouse, and you might choose to retain some of this for yourself because you don't want to give away your work, something like that, it's a problem. But if it's something that's hypercritical to that retracement, it should probably be put on file with the with the courthouse. Just consider that. A lot of times, if you know what you submitted isn't enough for the next surveyor to come and do a proper retracement, then you're probably not submitting enough in your deliverables. Uh, and I can understand, the concern, because it's a real valid concern that other people will come behind you and just copy your work and resubmit it if it feels really good and complete. They won't even do the work, and they're just making money off of your work, and that's frustrating. But our role as surveyors, our charge, is not to be the most financially wealthy of surveyors. Our charge is to protect the public. So you kind of have to find that balance, that ethical balance between protecting your work and protecting the public. Um, it's difficult, but it's doable, and I think with time and experience, you'll really figure out how to do that. All right, so next we're going to get into reading a legal description, and for the purpose of this course, drafting, how do you extract information from a legal description and turn that into a CAD drawing. But before we get into that, we're going to go over a few definitions that I think are going to be important to know before we get into this. So first is metes and bounds. So metes and bounds is a system describing land by measuring distances, our metes, and our directions, the bounds, from the point of beginning around a property's perimeter. So metes and bounds is the land system that we use in Texas. So you're going to be seeing a lot of that as you continue through this program. Then we have calls. So calls are the individual directional instructions in a legal description. Each call specifies a distance and a direction. So an example of that would be north 45 degrees east 200 feet. That's your call. So you have a bearing and distance there. Then we have our point of beginning, or commonly referred to as our POB. So that's the starting point in a metes and bounds description. And all measurements and directions begin and end here. It is the most critical monument to set, is that point of beginning. And it's one of the most important ones to try to recover, because it is from that point, when you're doing a proper retracement, that you should begin every retracement survey. It's not always an option, but you need to make sure you do the most you can to start there, because that's going to help you kind of understand where any potential error may have come from when you retrace it as they did it. The bearing, that's going to be the direction of a line, and it's going to be given in degrees, minutes, and seconds, or at least it should be, relative to north or south. And then your distance is going to be the length of a line, usually measured in feet or meters, but sometimes in older units such as rods, chains, and varas. In your survey courses, you'll get to go through a lot more of those as well. A few more definitions. A monument. So monuments are a physical object used as a reference point, like a survey marker, a tree, or a stone. And again, monuments, that's physical evidence that you are trying to recover in the ground. Sometimes you have to set it yourself, so that's typically these days we're going to be using things like iron rods. If you're doing tech stock projects, maybe you get to do some cool concrete monuments with some fun stamps on them. Next word, thence. Thence is a term meaning from there, and it's used to indicate the next call in the sequence of your property retracement. A course is going to be similar to a call. It's a segment of the property's boundary defined by a specific direction and distance. Lot and block is going to be references to specific parcels within a recorded plat or a subdivision map. So a lot more newer construction and things like that, everything's going to be lot and block a lot of times. And then you have your range and township, and that's a term, those are both terms used in the public land survey system to define a grid for land description. And that's something you'll see in other states, not necessarily in Texas. Some foolish people like to think that out west they use range and townships just because when it was being subdivided, everything was just square after square after square, but it is not. Don't be fooled into thinking it is. It is still a meets and bounds parcel. All right, and that's going to be the rest of our definitions. Now we're going to get into a sample legal description that we will walk through. All right, so to start going through this legal description, I have it broken up into a series of sections on several slides. So we're going to kind of go through this entire legal description together, and I'm going to kind of point out where we have specific information that's going to be relevant for you as the surveyor, and for us specifically as this course as drafters. So let's begin. So this is Exhibit A. We know the total number of pages that are going to be a part of this. So sometimes that's helpful because courthouses flood, courthouses burn down. Sometimes we have missing information, and to know how long this is supposed to be can be surprisingly helpful. So let's get into the beginning. Being all that certain tract or parcel of land lying and being situated in Gonzales County, Texas, being part of the Sarah Smith League, abstract number 415, and being part of that certain tract of land described in that certain trustee's deed dated March 1st, 1938, from J.H. Porter, trustee, to Chas F. Moore, recorded in volume 181, pages 271 to 272 of the Gonzales County Deed Records, and being the same tract of 46.4 acres of land, more or less, described in that certain oil and gas lease dated February 9th, 1945, from C.F. Moore to H.H. Caulfield, recorded in volume 229, pages 616 to 620 of the Gonzales County Deed Records, and the particular portion thereof hereby intended to be conveyed is described by metes and bounds as follows to wit. So this is going to be the typical first paragraph of any legal description, and what it is it's telling us where the supporting evidence for this legal description comes from. We know that it's part of this abstract number. We know that it's going to be in Gonzales County. It should be at the Gonzales County Deed Records. We know that we're going to have a deed on this date with this grantor and grantee and this volume and these pages. We also know that it's going to be described in another record from an oil and gas lease on this date from this grantor to grantee, recorded in this volume and these pages also in the Gonzales County Deed Records. So we have two major pieces of evidence that we're gonna want to look up, both at the Gonzales County Deed Records office. We want that oil and gas lease where it's defined, and we want that deed that's going to be from March 1st, 1938. Those are really important because that's going to be your starting point of maybe trying to recover additional evidence. Maybe there's a plat there, maybe there's a larger map or other references. Here we know that there's a deed with volumes. Deeds typically have a plat with them, and we know with that oil and gas lease, especially since they're saying that there's a 46.4 acres of land included in that oil and gas lease, there's probably another plat there. So that's going to be very vital information for us to recover. All right, so after that, we really get into the part where, for this course, for drafting, is going to get really important. We see our first word, beginning, all caps. This is our point of beginning. This is going to be where, when we're trying to maybe draw this retracement, which is what we're going to do in our design lab this week, redraw a retracement from a legal description. This is our first point. We know that it's an iron pipe for that 46.4 acre tract of land. And then from there, we know our monument. We have a witness tree, a hickory tree that's 15 inches in diameter, marked with an X. So it's been blazed. If you're in the field, that's going to be really important to identify. And we know the direction and the distance for that hickory tree. We know that it's north 48 degrees east, so 48 northeast. Think azimuth. And then it's 11.6 varas away, so that's our distance. And then our other monumentation to help us define our point of beginning, we know that there is a point south 42 degrees 15 minutes west and 1,972 varas from one of the easterly corners of the Sarah Smith League, which easterly corner is also the northwest corner of the James Gibson League. So this is important. We already know that we are in the Sarah Smith League, abstract number 415, from our first paragraph. Now we know we're calling to one of those corners, and we know that that corner, that adjoiner along that lot for us is going to be follow that line throughout the Sarah Smith League all the way to where it hits the James Gibson League. So now you have two leagues. You're going to find that easterly corner where they're meeting, and then you know from there along that line how far and in what direction you should be going to get to your point of beginning. So now we've essentially triangulated that point of beginning. We have a point of beginning, we have one witness tree, and then we have one other reference point from that corner from the Sarah Smith League, to help us find that intersection, and that is exactly where our point of beginning for this should be. And that's all we've done. We found one point with this. That's really what we're looking at as far as our boundary is concerned. All right. So moving forward, thence, with the north line of said 46.4 acre tract, south 42 degrees east at 123 varas to the center line of a pipeline at 591 varas, an iron pipe set at the most easterly corner of said tract for the east corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described. So right here, this is probably where most people trying to look at this and do this for the first time might make their first mistake. So we're at our point of beginning. From that point of beginning, along that north line, we see that we need to go south 42 degrees east, and then at 123 varas, there's the center line of a pipeline. People might do that. They're going to measure, and they're going to find that pipeline 123 varas away. Then they're going to read this next. At 591 varas, an iron pipe set at the most easterly corner of said tract. So from that center line of the pipeline, a lot of people might make that mistake and think they need to go another 591 varas to get to the corner. In reality, this definition, this pipeline, the center line of this pipeline that we just got to, is separate. It's just a reference point along your 591 vara property line between your point of beginning and your next corner, your next point of monumentation. That's what it is. It's 591 varas from the point of beginning to the iron pipe. This 123 is in the middle. So in reality, you're doing this, you're shooting this line. You go south 42 degrees east, 123 varas to the center of your pipeline, and then you go 468 more varas till you should find your iron pipe. 468, that's your 591 minus 123, it's 468. So that's all that is. You're just having a point of reference along that total line. So when you're drawing this, in reality what you're doing is you have your point of beginning, you set south 42 degrees east, and you go 591 varas, and that's your next corner. You can make an additional point, 123 varas along that line, to mark that piece of evidence that you might want to recover in the field to help back up your boundary retracement. But it is not a separate line, it's along that line. And I think that's really important when we do this in the lab exercise. It should make more sense, because I will post a quick video doing this specific retracement in AutoCAD Real or in Civil 3D. Alright, so moving forward, after we found our point of beginning in our first corner, we're at that 591 line iron pipe. Thence, with the southeast line of the said 46.4 acre tract, south 47 degrees 45 minutes west, 175.5 varas to an iron pipe set at a corner of said tract for a corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described. And this is important too. So again, there's nothing that we've pointed out in the middle of this one. We just know from that iron pipe we just recovered, we're going 175.5 varos south, 47 degrees, 45 minutes west. This set part is important. If it says set, that means that the surveyor who wrote this legal description set that pipe or that monumentation. If you are doing this survey, you're not setting it. You are recovering or finding. So when you wrote this, if you were to write this legal description and you found this monumentation, you would have put south 47 degrees, 45 minutes west, 175.5 bars to an iron pipe found at a corner of said tract. And that's the difference. This is where your field work ties into your legal description, why you need to make sure that you understand the difference between some of these words. So this is a legal document, and that's kind of why it's written the way it is. It's very explicit. It means what it says. So whenever you write legal descriptions in the future, like for your final project, think about that. Think about set and found. Those are very important things to remember. All right. Now that we've recovered that one, it's thence with an easterly line of the said 46.4 acre tract south 30 degrees 52 minutes east at 50 varos, the center line of an electric transmission line at 163 varos, the center line of a telephone line easement at 182 varos, and an iron pipe set at the southeast corner of said tract and on the north line of Old Highway number 90 for the southwest corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described, from which pipe a post oak tree 15 inches in diameter marked X bears 4 west marked X bears west 4 varos. So this is taking what we learned before, right? So we're moving thence from our previous iron pipe, this direction, this distance. We found not one thing. We found a center line of electric transmission. We found a second thing, a center line of a telephone line easement. And then we got to the iron pipe that we set 182 total varos away from this iron pipe. Now, we have additional witness marked here. And you'll know that this is not trying to say it's along the line, but from it, because it says from which pipe. So that's saying the pipe that we just recovered up here, a post oak tree 15 inches in diameter, marked X, bears west 4 varos. So this is another witness tree. This is not along this line, along our original line, to our monumentation. It's not saying this tree is our monumentation, but it is monumentation, but a witness to the corner that we just set. So that's what you'll see there. So you kind of see that comma, right? It breaking the sentence up. This is whole definition of this line, comma, now we have witness or additional reference. It's not always going to be a witness tree. To our monumentation. So that's going to help you when you get to this iron pipe that's set. If you can't find that post oak tree 15 inches in diameter, and the area looks like it's been untouched for a while, you might be at the wrong point. Alright, continuing. Thence with the north line of said highway, north 89 degrees 15 minutes west, 104.5 varos to an iron pipe set in said line at the southeast corner of that certain tract of 2 acres of land, more or less from H.D. Moore et al. To H.P. Anderson et al., school trustees of Common School District number 53 of Gonzales County, Texas, dated June 11th, 1927, recorded in volume 250, pages 536 to 537 of the Gonzales County deed records, for a corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described. So we've had reference points, monumentation along our property line. We've had witnesses to our iron pipes, our corners that we've set. Now, what we have here is an adjoiner that's going to be important for us that we're going to be working our way around. So we're coming, we're finding an iron pipe that's set, and we know that that adjoiner, which is an important adjoiner, is to another piece of property, a smaller lot right here of 2 acres of land, more or less, that we're going to be able to go and find it. And that, again, because it's an adjoiner, it's going to be important for us to at least collect that evidence to make sure that we don't have any conflicting information. Pardon me. Thence, with the east line of said 2 acres tract, north 11 east at 14 varas, the center line of a telephone line easement at 104.54 varas, an iron pipe set at the northeast corner of said tract for a corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described. So again, we've moved along. We have that center line along the easement, and then we have our actual iron pipe that's been set for the new northeast corner of the land. Thence, with the north line of said 2 acre tract, north 89 degrees west, 108 varas to an iron pipe set at the northeast corner this is a typo, of said tract for a corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described. So we've moved again, nothing too crazy there. Here we know we're moving on to page 2 of 2, so this should be our final page. Thence, with the west line of said 2 acre tract, south 10 degrees 50 minutes west, 75.1 varas, to an iron pipe set in said line where the north line of the aforementioned highway intersects said line for a corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described. So again, this is a point that we should also be seeing referenced in that additional referencing evidence. Thence, with the north line of said highway, north 31 degrees 8 minutes west, 36 varas, north 41 degrees 50 minutes west, 36 varas, north 51 degrees 45 minutes west, 36 varas, so on and so forth, and so on, all at 36 varas, 36 varas, 36 varas, to an iron pipe set in the south line of the said 46.4 acre tract, where the same is intersected by the north line of said highway, a corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described. Now, this is not something that we ever want to see you do. What this is the surveyor got to this point, looked at where they needed to follow a curve around the highway to their next point, and said, I don't know how to do that math. So they ran a series of chords, each at 36 varas, all the way along that curve. That's not great surveying, but at least they had the right of mind to utilize a method that they knew how to do versus doing it wrong altogether. However, this is something that we want to aspire to be better than as surveyors. We should be able to calculate horizontal curves just fine. You're going to have learned that plenty in your survey math courses. But this is the original legal description, so this is the way it would be retraced. That's important to know. Just because you know how it could have been done better or more properly doesn't override how the original survey was conducted. That's another thing that's important. That's why it's good to understand, historical surveys, and the history of surveying, to know how things were done and why certain people approach problems certain ways, because it is our job as a surveyor to retrace these boundaries, not redefine it as we see fit. It's not always about optimization. At this point, it's about proper retracement and following in the footsteps of the surveyor that came before us. I digress. Thence, with the south line of the 46.4 acre tract, north 57 degrees 45 minutes west, 243 varas, to an iron pipe set at the most westerly corner of said tract, for the southwest corner of this tract, or parcel of land hereby intended to be described, from which pipe a post oak tree 30 inches in diameter, marked X, bears north 42 degrees east, 13.8 varas, and a post oak tree 16 inches in diameter, marked V, bears north 46 degrees west, 27.8 varas. So here we have two different witnesses, and that's why we have one with an X and one with a V. That's all that means. Again, we're following along just like we have previously. We found a couple pieces of evidence along, but again, the most important part is this evidence that we found here near these trees. Thence, with a westerly line of the said 46.4 acre tract, north 50 degrees 30 minutes east, at 84 varas, the center line of an electric transmission line at 234 varas, a corner of said tract for a corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described, from which pipe a post oak tree 20 inches in diameter, marked X, bears north 15 degrees west, 3.5 varas, and a post oak tree 16 inches in diameter, marked X, bears south 50 degrees west, 7 varas. Thence, with a southwesterly line of the said 46.4 acre tract, north 14 degrees west at 110 varas, the center line of a pipeline easement at 169 varas, an iron pipe set at the westerly corner of said tract for a corner of this tract or parcel of land hereby intended to be described, from which pipe a post oak tree 15 inches in diameter, marked X, bears south 79 degrees east, 25.7 varas, and a twin post oak tree 15 inches in diameter, marked X, bears south 20 degrees east, 12 varas. Thence, continuing with the westerly line of the said 46.4 acre tract, north 47 degrees 52 minutes east, 225.3 varas, to the place of beginning, containing within said bounds 45.136 acres of land, more or less. Excuse me. So that got us all the way back to our place of beginning. This is how you know we've reached the end of the boundary. It tells us again, once we've reached that place of beginning, what our acreage should be. What's the area of this tract? So 45.136 acres of land, more or less. So because it's more or less, that means if you do your retracement, you recover all of the monumentation, everything fits, and then your area comes out to be 45.137. You check the math, that's accurate. You don't need to worry about it. It's 45.136 acres of land, more or less. Now, if you come across 47.139 acres of land, you busted something somewhere. Something's wrong, whether it's your math for the area or in your retracement itself. So keep that in mind. So then we get to the last bits of it, being the same land described in that certain deed dated November 26, 1975, executed by Susie Ramirez, a famed soul, individually as an independent executrix of the estate of Charles F. Moore, deceased to Charles M. Lewis Sr., recorded in volume 411, pages 573 to 577 of the Gonzales County Deed Records, and being the same land described in that certain deed dated October 31st, 1991, executed by Mary Ann Lewis et al. To Joseph L. Stafford, recorded in volume 693, page 496 of the official records of the Gonzales County, Texas. So what this is, and this is important, because you see here, there's a stamp for March 2nd, 2001. That's when this legal description essentially was refiled. This additional information here this is going to be where this property is also referenced. It's very important to understand when you do a retracement or when you refile something using original legal descriptions to note everywhere else that it's been used. If you pull these records, it probably references it. If you pull this second record, it probably again uses the same legal description and references this sale here from 1975. So it's important. It's all additional information to show, title lineage, or ownership lineage of a property that helps support not just your retracement, but also the land ownership. And all of this is things that you're going to be looking for because there are breaks in title at times. There is missing information, and that's how we end up with cases, whether it's about encroachments or adverse possession or whatever. Additionally, we're just going to take a couple looks at some of the other evidence because we have it for this specific deed. So this is that FM 1680 right-of-way map that it was referencing for US 90. So here we have that curve, we have the rail, this is US 90, excuse me, and this is the rail line that's going to be nearby. So this is all additional evidence right in this area in which we're supposed to be looking. Then we also recover things. We have this 45.136 acre plat. And again, this is small. We're going to zoom into it in sections here coming up. But again, we do have a recorded plat covered with its reference to volume and pages where it should be referencing this description from. And we can see everything that was originally done. So it was a hand-drawn plat, so it's still drafting by hand at this time. So it's going to be handwritten. You have to make sure that you are certain of any data that you transcribe from here. Make sure that this number, these distances that you're reading, you're reading the right number. Reference that legal description, which was at least done by typewriter, and make sure they're matching, they're in sync. And if this doesn't match that legal description, and maybe you can't recover one of these pipes in the field, that legal description is going to hold the most weight if you can't properly recover or validate the location of that pipe. Again, here's the power line easement that's running through here. It got referenced a couple times. Here's our set of chords done ridiculously, but hey, at least it's there. This is that school tract that was offered, so we can see that. We know now that it's Welder Independent School District. The bottom part of that power line easement coming through. I think earlier on the top we had the telephone line as well. Is that accurate? No, it was the pipeline, excuse me. So we have lots of monumentation. Oh, here's the telephone line, sorry. So we have the plat kind of to visualize all that information. And then again, very important, hopefully all of you that want to be surveyors end up with one of these one day, the stamp. And again, it is really important to have the stamp because if you know the surveyor who created this plat, wrote that legal description, that's going to be the first person you're probably going to go to try to acquire evidence if you have any questions, if there's any confusion, or maybe someone who took over their business, things like that. It gives you a point of reference to a person who was responsible for creating this, or at least an office. You never know what you may or may not find. Alright, so I'm going to record on a separate video us taking this legal description, and we're going to be converting everything that we saw in that legal description into some notes for us before we jump into AutoCAD, and then we'll go through actually drawing this retracement in Civil 3D, and we're going to talk about why we might draw that retracement before we even go to the field. Alright, so I'll continue separately from here. Alright, this is going to be the second part of Lecture 5, where we're actually going to go over retracing that legal description that we reviewed for that property. So over here, you're going to have where I've broken down that legal description. This is our original legal description information here. We have all of our calls listed all the way from our point of beginning through each corner to back to the point of beginning. So all I did here was I took that legal description here. I can open it again real quick for us. So all I've done is, from our point of beginning, I have broadened over our bearings, our south 42 east, and then what our total VARs, our total distance was here. And then what I did, and we'll see this in Civil 3D as we go through, I had to make a few conversions, and that's what this table is going to be. It's actually going to be our CAD input. This here is going to signify the quadrant that we're working in, and here these are our Civil 3D quadrants, and we'll see some of those prompts show up as we work on this. And these are our conversions from VARs to Texas VARs to feet. And that's all we're looking at here. So again, we've extracted all these little bits of information that we just went over, we just reviewed, that describe the boundary of the calls to each corner, and we have now converted it into something that's going to be a little bit quicker to put in to Civil 3D. So again, these are, I'll write it up here too. Quadrant, bearing, and distance. And that's all it is. And then we'll actually take a look at that here. So we've got Civil 3D open. And I'll upload this file, this Excel file as well for y'all onto Canvas. Keep it in frame. Sorry, I'm trying to grab this corner. I can cover up the original. So this is really what we're looking at. So to draw lines by bearing and distance, what we do, once you have Civil 3D open and you have just a drawing open, make sure you're on the Home tab, come over to Draw, pick the line options, and then we're going to do line by bearing. And it's going to ask us for our first point. We don't have a point file or anything like that. This is a reference just to get an idea of what this should look like, make sure that this legal description makes sense. So you can kind of pick anywhere on the map for now. We don't really have a reference point for that. And you see here our first prompt is to pick our quadrants. And it's telling us down here what each quadrant is. Northeast is 1, southeast is 2, southwest is 3, northwest is 4. So we're going to go through our first one. Our quadrant, our direction is 2. And then I want to know our bearing. And this is an important thing to know here. It's an error in Civil 3D's actual description. It says spaced, but that is not what we're going to be doing. What we would do, what's a bad example on this one, but it would be the degrees is the whole number. Then it would be a decimal point for the minutes. The next two, the tenths and hundredths place, are going to be your minutes. And then anything after that is your seconds. So I went ahead and just put in 42.0000 to show you that. If you try to do spaces, it moves directly on from your bearing to your distance. So again, that's 42. And then our distance, we see it's in feet. Our first one is going to be 1,641.67 feet. And I did round our significant digits on the conversion from VARs to feet just to our hundredths place, for the sake of simplicity here. All right, so we can kind of keep going through this. I'm going to go kind of quick, and then we're going to kind of see what our drawing looks like after we use the information as is from our legal description. So let's see, we have 347.45, 487.5 distance, 2, 30.52, 505.56, 4, 89.15, 290.28, 1, 11, 290.39, 489, 300, 310.5, 208.61. Here we come up on our chords. 431.08, 100, 441.4, 100, 451.45, 100, 461.55, 100, 471.45, 100, 482.2, 100, 457.45, 675, 150.3, 650, 414, 469.45, 147.52, 625.84. And then I can hit escape to exit that tool. Now we're done. So this, based on just the text in the legal description, we can see there's a huge blown corner here. This is clearly a blunder of some form. So we need to identify what went wrong. Well, I can tell you now, I've already gone back through the legal description, and the numbers that we have here are accurate. The bearings and the distances, they are as they show in the legal description. So the first thing we might do is like, well, how do we fix this? We can tell a lot of this looks right, but somewhere there's something wrong. So what you could do, you can take a few at a time, and maybe we move them. So this point should connect to our point of beginning, right? It should be there. We know our chords are probably all correct. There's probably nothing wrong there. Then we kind of get to these points and we see, hey, what's this? There's possibly something wrong here, because this starts looking a lot more like our tract, because we did have a copy of the plat. Now I'll open that up, right? And we see this is accurate, so something's wrong with this line here. So let's go ahead and zoom in on our plat and see what's recorded here. Well, we have, so this is 1, 2, 3, fourth line, 30 degrees, 52 seconds, and that's confirmed in our legal description. But then on the plat, we see 3 degrees, 52 minutes, not 30 degrees. Here, I'll come back to it. Let's see, it's right here. 30 degrees, 52 minutes east. So I said before, that legal description, that's technically holds weight over this, over our drawing. But we can see clearly in the legal description, this is a blunder. Let's see what happens if we redraw this line instead of 30 degrees, 52 minutes at 3 degrees. So we'll come back in, we'll do another line by bearing. I'll go from that point where it originally started. We know it's 2, and we're going to do 3.52 this time instead of 30.52 at 505.56. And just like that, we have damn near closure. I mean, this is nothing. This is... Oh, I need to turn my snapping on, sorry. Intersection. 500ths in that direction. Pretty close. 600ths in that direction. It's not a big miss. Let's do what we probably should do here. We would move these back to make sure that our boundary is contiguous as the calls are ordered. So I selected them all, and then I hit M command for move, and now I'm going to select our selection by this point, I'll remove it to this point so that they close. And then we're going to reassess our closure here. And you can see that's a tiny gap, 800ths. And you have to think about the equipment that was used for this, the time frame it was used, and the overall accuracy. That's a pretty solid measurement. And we see there was this blunder, clearly a blunder. So we would update this to reflect 3.52 and we'd star it. And in your notes you would probably put something along the lines of divide blunder legal description. Just as a note, everything else is pretty good, And this, in reality, this is how you would do your basic retracement. And this is exactly what you're going to do in your lab. You're going to have a copy of another legal description, a much smaller one, and you're going to recreate it. And what we can also do quickly is we can add our labels. We already know how to do this, right? So we're going to go ahead and hit parcel. We're going to do multi-segment, and there's our bearing over distance. So let's go ahead and hit that, and then we can just kind of click through each of them. Again, going in the order in which they are surveyed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chords. There we go. And just like that, we have a fantastic starting working sketch in order to begin our field work. What we could eventually do, if we wanted to utilize GIS in order to enhance our pre-field op, is we can go through and we can identify coordinates for some of these properties. If we can identify, maybe where this road is, where this school boundary is, maybe there's fence lines, we can kind of fit this to that, and then we actually could extract coordinate points, x, y, lat, longs, that we can use to essentially stake out to maybe guide us to where we're expecting to try to recover some of those original monuments. And if you're doing this survey with a GPS instead of a total station, that's going to save you a lot of time and having to COGO this in the field. Now all of a sudden you get out there and you have so much information already assimilated into a single document into now a drawing or a stakeout file, and you'll be able to go straight into the field and try to find these locations. Once you do, that's when hey, I found the monumentation, that's great, let me do my control network, let me run that traverse, that setup, and then shoot in all these points with the total station for higher accuracy measurements. That's something that you'll eventually do in future courses, so try to remember what you're doing here, and this is really the starting point. This is the push-off point for a boundary survey. So I look forward to seeing all of your results on the lab for this week, and go ahead and let me know if you have any questions. This kind of concludes it. All right, thank y'all.